As we learn in Chapter 1, the show IP route command is used to display the routing table. Initially, the routing table is empty if no interface has been configured. As you can see in the routing table for R1, no interface has been configured with an IP address and subnet mask. Note, static routes and dynamic routes will not be added to the routing tables until the appropriate local interfaces, also known as exit interfaces, have been configured on the router. This procedure will be examined more closely in later chapters. Interfaces and their status. The status of each interface can be examined by using several commands. Click Show Interface in the figure. The Show Interface command shows the status and gives a detailed description for all interfaces on the router. As you can see, the output from the command can be rather lengthy. To view the same information but for a specific interface such as Fast Ethernet 00, use the Show Interface command and a parameter that specifies the interface. For example, R1 shows interface Fast Ethernet 00. Fast Ethernet 00 is administratively down. Line protocol is down. Notice that the interface is administratively down and the line protocol is down. Administratively down means that the interface is currently in the shutdown mode or turn off. Line protocol is down means in this case that the interface is not receiving a carrier signal from a switch or a hub. This condition may also be due to the fact that the interface is in shutdown mode. You will notice that the Show Interface commands does not show any IP addresses on R1 interfaces. The reason for this is because we have not yet configured IP addresses on any of the interfaces. Additional commands. Click Show IP Interface Brief in the figure. The Show IP Interface Brief commands can be used to see a portion of the interface information in a condensed format. Click Show Running Config in the figure. The Show Running Config command displays the current configuration file that the router is using. Configuration commands are temporarily stored in the running configuration file and implemented immediately by the router. Using the command is another way to verify the status of an interface such as Fast Ethernet 00. Show Running Config. However, using Show Running Config is not necessarily the best way to verify interface configuration. Use the Show IP Interface Brief command to quickly verify that the interface are up and up administratively up and line protocol is up. Now look at the routing table shown in figure. Notice R1 now has the directly connected Fast Ethernet 00 interface in new network. The interface was configured with a 172.16.3.124 IP address, which makes it a member of the 172.16.3.0//24 network. Examine the following line of the output from the table. C 172.16.3.0 is directly connected Fast Ethernet 00. The C at the beginning of the route indicates that this is directly connected network. In other words, R1 has an interface that belongs to the network. The meaning of C is defined in the list of codes at the top of the routing table. The /24 subnet mask for the route is displayed in the line above the actual route. Let's verify the status by showing the Show Interface command. On the router here we see the Show Interface Fast Ethernet 00 command. This shows that the interface is up and the protocol is up. The No Shutdown command changed the interface from administratively down to up. Notice that the IP address is now displayed. Let's click the Show IP Interface Brief. This command also verifies the same information under the status and protocol. You see everything is up. A router Ethernet interface participates in a LAN network just like any other device on that network. This means that the interface have a layer 2 MAC address as shown in figure. The Show Interface command displays the MAC address for the Ethernet interface. Okay, please note the physical link between R1 and R2 is up because both ends of the serial link has been configured correctly with an IP address and subnet mask, and enabled with the no shutdown command. However, the line protocol is still down. This is because the interface has not received a clock cycle or a clock signal. There is still one more command that we need to enter, the clock rate command on the router with the DC cable. The clock rate command will set the clock signal from the link. Configuring the clock symbol will be discussed in the next section. The WAN physical layer describes the interface between the data terminal, the DTE, and the data circuit terminal equipment, the DCE. Generally, the DC is a service provider and the DTE is an attached device. In this model, the service offered by the DTE are made available either through a modem or a DCE. Typically, the router is the DTE and it is connected to a DCE, which is also considered as a CSU or DSU. The DCE device is used to convert the data from the router DTE device into a form accessible to the WAN service provider. The DCE is also responsible for converting the data from the WAN service provided into a form accessible by the router DTE. The router is usually connected to the DCE using a serial DTE cable as shown. Serial interfaces requires a clock signal to convert the timing of the communication. In most environments, the service provider, the DCE, such as the CSU and DSU, would provide a clock. By default, Cisco routers are the DTE devices. However, in the lab environment, we are not using the DCE. We do not have For serial links, they are directly interconnected as in a lab environment. One side of the connections must be considered as a DCE and providing a clock signal. Although Cisco serial interface are DTE devices by default, they can be configured as DCE devices. To configure a router to be a DC devices, 1. Connect the DC end of the cable to the serial interface, and 2. Configure the clock signal on the serial interface using the clock rate command. These serial cables used in this lab are typically one of two types: the DTE and the DCE crossover cable, on which one end is the DTE and the other end is the DCE. The DTE cable connected to a DCE cable. Verifying the serial interface configuration. As you can see from the figure, we can determine that the line protocol is now up and verify this on both ends of the serial link by using the show interface and show IP interface brief commands.